Welcome back to the Investor Professor podcast. This is Dr. Ryan Peckham, and this is episode 52. So on this week's episode, we're joined with a special guest talking about how do you start your financial journey, even if it's just $100 a month. So we discuss where you need to be mentally, financially, how does it all work? It's a great time to start. The market's been down 11 out of the last 12 weeks. When is the last time that's happened, you asked? Never. It has never happened before. So the market's getting creamed. Terrific time to start your financial journey, even if it's at a smaller scale. We discuss everything that you're going to need to know. So I hope you'll join us. I hope you get your mind right, and we'll see you on the other side. All right. Well, welcome back to the Investor Professor podcast. I am joined today with Federico, who runs the Wisdom Addicts podcast, does a lot of marketing. We'll let him introduce himself in a minute. But one of the things we wanted to touch base on was kind of this main question of how do I get started? So many people have been listening to the podcast, and one of the number one questions that comes up is how do I get started, even if I have $100 a month? So that's what we're going to title this episode, $100 a month. How do I get started? Federico, thanks for doing this, man. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Peckham. It's really been an honor just to be able to work with you, learn from you. For me and our team, every Monday we listen to your episode, and it's just so many facts, so much wisdom that we absorb. And I just think financial literacy is the way to go. And a little bit about me, I'm 27 years old. I run and I'm part of the Reaching Dreams agency. We're a marketing and consulting agency. I also run a blog, which is called Wisdom Addicts, which we have turned into a podcast and more of like a community of people that through reading, well-being, exercising, are trying to do better in life. And I've been running that page for 4 years now. And it's really cool to meet up with people from all over the world that just like you ventured in a journey of self-growth and self-development. And yes, that's a little bit more about me. Thank you very much for having me in this episode.
Absolutely. I'm excited to do this because I know, there is a lot of interest in when somebody's looking at their finances, or they're looking at how they're going to change their family tree, or they're going to change their wealth, like how to do it. And so I thought you were, based on some of the stuff we discussed, that you'd be perfect for this. So you've talked about how you want to start investing in August, but what are some of the things that you did to like prepare yourself financially to be able to do that?
Of course. Well, 3 years ago, I quit my last job and I decided I was going to go into the world of entrepreneurship full time. And obviously, it's not the same when you're 23, 24 years old and you have a salary that you can live on. I went the other way. I started investing in myself, investing in the growth of my businesses. So really, I understood the importance of paying myself. I always try to pay myself, obviously, after I pay all the expenses. But 2 years ago, obviously with COVID coming, income was limited. A lot of resources were limited. So I was like, okay, let me take a step back, limit my expenses. But really it was a year ago when I looked at my finances and I turned 26 and I was like, okay, there's no going back from this. So I looked at my finances. I had some debt here, some debt there. And I was just like, okay, I really have to start putting my finances first. So what I did was I opened different bank accounts, so I could separate my savings from my expenses. That was the first thing I did. And really, it's been a journey of a lot of discipline, knowing how to say no and when to say no, really limiting my expenses to the things that are important, not the things that I think at the moment I need, but are more wants. And really, it's been it's really been a matter of just being smart with my money and knowing that when I wake up, knowing that I have $1,000 saved, it's not the same thing as having no money saved, and
Right.
thinking that if the money ever stops not coming, then what am I going to do? So really, that's the mentality that I adapted.
Yeah, it's changing your mindset, but you bring up a really good point where you said you separated your savings from kind of where you pay your expenses, right? Because our natural habit is to spend what we see. So when you do everything from the same account and you're, it's Friday night or Saturday and people want to go out and everything, you check your bank account and you go, oh, I have money. But, and so what ends up happening is we spend what we see. So then when it comes time to having savings, there's nothing there because you've spent it all. And so that's why it's so important. You also said to pay yourself first, because a lot of times, the mistake we make is we'll say, okay, at the end of the month, I'm going to save whatever's left. But then there's nothing ever left at the end of the month, which is how, retirement plans, 401ks, these kind of things. That's why they take it out before they give you the money, because they know they won't ever be able to get it back from you if they don't take it out before they give it to you. Right. So just having these little, I'm not going to, just these little, you have to know yourself and how you relate to money, and so that you can basically protect yourself from yourself. So if you know that you're going to spend what you see, put it in a savings account that you can't get to. You got to, sometimes we become our own worst enemy when it comes to that.
Yes, indeed. And two things to add to that is, first, for me, I have right now about 5 sources of income. Some of them are established businesses. Some of them are more like services I offer. And really knowing that I'm taking care of my business, but also myself, is something that I always tell people that go into the journey of entrepreneurship. Is like, hey, if you're not taking care of yourself along the way, you're not going to get to where you want to get. And also, I remember in February, I have 2 bank accounts here in the Dominican Republic, and I used to have debit cards. And in a matter of 2 weeks, I lost both of my debit cards. And I was like, wow, this is so bad. How am I going to spend my money and stuff? Mm-hmm. And to this day, I have not gotten 2 more debit cards in that account. And the bank always calls me like, hey, why don't you have a card? And I'm like, I don't need it. Yeah. That was my main thing, is to say Friday night, Saturday night, you go, you take out the debit card, you don't sweat it. But really, that thing happening, and it's not something that I advise, but just trying to keep your money safe from you, as you say it. And really, it's helped me. It didn't happen because I wanted to, but when it did, I was like, wait, what if I just learn how to limit my spending? Because if I really have an emergency, I have the money. I don't need the card. I need the money when the money is needed, which are 2 very different things.
Well, and one of the things about being in a digital world is that, used to, you would get a bank statement and you would look at it, right? And you would see if the charges. Now we just kind of look at our phone or whatever, and we're just kind of spot checking our bank account. But nobody really prints off their bank statement to see, what they've spent money on. And so they're not looking at, hey, I went to Starbucks 9 times and I went to Walmart, I have 15 charges to Walmart, and it's not the big expenses that get us. It's the little expenses. And especially with, Disney Plus and Netflix and all the things that, that we have now, all these services. I mean, it really becomes like death by PowerPoint, or not death by paper cut for your bank statement. Like your bank account, it's just all these little $7, $8, $9 charges that hit at all different times throughout the month. I mean, used to people would pay their bills on the 1st and the 15th. Now it's whenever you sign up for a service. So you're just getting chopped left and right. And you're like, where's my money going? And that's not a very good feeling when you don't feel like you have any money and you don't know where it went. That's not a good place to be. Right. So, but you have to make a conscious effort to think about, where's my money going and how am I spending it? Because it's hard to look in the mirror and go, you're the reason I don't have money. Who's this stranger in the mirror that keeps spending my money? It's not a great place to be.
Indeed, it is not a good place to be.
it's not a good place to be. So you kind of have to have those things, which you've already worked on. You got to have those things in place before you can start really investing, because the number one mistake that people make when it comes to investing is they trade too often. And they usually trade too often because either the market's going crazy like it is now, or they don't have any savings and they're using their investment account as their savings. So then they got to trade when something happens, and it could be a good time. It could be a bad time. I mean, but really the money you put back in investing needs to be money that you don't think you're going to need for at least 3 years or so. And so, sometimes investors can kind of set themselves up for failure just based on that time horizon, as they just don't give themselves enough time to let things see if they're going to work. The other main point I wanted to bring up that you just discussed is you talked about how you were investing in yourself the past couple of years. And that is so key, getting different streams of income, building up your entrepreneurship practice and all the things you're working on. But really, it's hard to invest if you don't have enough disposable income to be able to set some money aside, right? I mean, so that's why we talk about investing in yourself mentally, financially. I mean, you have to, make yourself more valuable, get paid more money, earn more money so that you can set some money aside for later on. So I appreciate you bringing up that point.
Yes, and I want to add, Dr. Peckham, that in terms of the investment aspect, 2020, 2021, I had so many of the people close to me that kind of started like pushing me into investing into crypto and all this. And I think I was the only person that did not invest into any of that, because what I saw, I was like, okay, why is really now the time when everyone is investing, when nobody is talking about self-development or self-love or making more money? And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to fall into that, just because I like investing my money into things that I know I am passionate about and I know I can put my time and energy into, which are my businesses, and it's myself. And now, like, when I look at the people that did that, and they affected their savings and they didn't really focus on other streams of income. Now I look at myself and I'm like, wow, these past 2 years, I grew my businesses. I helped the people that work with me grow. I worked on growing myself. So like now I feel that I am in a position of investing my money into my future self, which is something you always say. But I can't be thinking about investing if I don't even have stable sources of income, if I can't control what I do in my day to day, and I'm just being another sheep in the herd. And I think that's what happens a lot.
Well, and that goes back to just running your own race, and it's hard. I mean, it is very hard. Like I didn't get wrapped up in crypto, but I remember back in 1999, 2000, the first tech bubble that burst. I mean, one of the things that's hard is when you're working very hard and you see people around you that you don't think should be making as much money as they are, and they are, right? Their investments that they got, there's all these bottle rockets going off, and, I put this money into this coin and it tripled in 3 days. And, that it's hard to stay centered and balanced and grounded when you have that happen. And you really have to think about, your long term, not everybody else's. And now it's sad because you're going to see there's stories coming out every day about how much people have lost. They lost their life savings, all this kind of stuff. And I mean, who knows where crypto will be in a couple of years? I mean, I'm sure some of them will work out, some of them won't. But to me, it's just different. If I'm down in Coca-Cola, I know that they're going to sell Coke tomorrow, and that's what makes it hard for me on the crypto piece, which I've discussed. But yeah, I mean, it's bad when it starts to affect real people, and some people that won't actually be able to recover from it. I mean, it's real money for a lot of people. So, all right, well, let's get to the task at hand here. Let's talk about how do we start investing with $100 a month. Now, one of the things I'm going to say about this is, number one, I'm not your financial advisor. So, this is for entertainment purposes only, as we like to say. But also, you could take this $100 a month. It could be $1,000 a month, all these things. The important part is to kind of start where you are and come up with a plan that you feel that will work for you. And I think that's what we'll be able to do today. And so, one of our discussions is that you opened a brokerage account somewhere, and I told you to not put on margin, right? And so I just want to tell everybody out there. So margin, when you look to open an investment account, it asks you if you want to do margin. Well, margin is a fancy word for leverage, which is another fancy word for borrowing money. And so I always tell people not to put margin on the account because it allows you to borrow money to invest, which is how a lot of people get in trouble. So you just have to protect yourself from that. It's usually offered because the brokerage firms make money off of that if you borrow money from them to invest. So you just have to be careful with that. But really, so my question for you would be, you've thought about investing. You've thought about, like we're going to start, let's say we're, somebody starting with $100 a month. What do you want to invest in? What do you want your portfolio to look like?
Obviously, this comes from listening to 50 episodes of The Investor Professor. But to be quite frank, Dr. Peckham, I want to invest in companies that I like. I want to invest in companies that obviously they comply with the EP ratio, that they have, they have solid income, they have good company culture. I just want to invest in companies that I see myself backing in 20 years, just because I'm not doing these $100 or this strategy just because I want to make money now, but because I want to see the effect of the compound effect. I want to see myself in 20, 30 years, as you have invested in companies like Coca-Cola. I want to find those companies that, for example, like Gatorade, I don't drink much Gatorade, but I believe in Gatorade. I believe in their mission. I believe in what they do, how they treat athletes. So really that's what I'm starting to look at. What companies I really see myself investing in 20 years. Because I don't want to start investing my money and being like looking at the charts every day. That's not what I want to do. I want to invest my money. And when you get your annual reports, I want to get my annual reports and really sit down and understand. Because for me, this is like, I went to college and I did a bachelor's degree. So now instead of doing a master's degree, I want to start investing in companies, and the knowledge I can get from them, I want that to be kind of like my master's degree, just learning on companies and really knowing more about the stock market per se.
So here's quiz time. Who owns Gatorade?
I don't know that yet.
It's Pepsi.
Oh, okay. Of course. Pepsi. Okay.
Pepsi owns Gatorade and also Frito-Lay. That's really the profitable piece, is the Frito-Lay. I mean, you want people to be healthy and drink Gatorade, but they're really just eating Frito-Lay potato chips, unfortunately. And Coca-Cola owns Powerade. So there you go. All right. Yeah. So companies you believe in, that is key. Companies that you believe in, so you'll stick with them. You won't get shaken out when times aren't good, and looking at some diversification. So those are good. So we can start there. So really, you remember the first episode, I told everybody, like, let's pretend like you had $100,000 portfolio and what companies would you want to own? And so that's really kind of where you have to be, is you have to think about, okay, if you were going to, let's say, even if I said 100, let's say it's $10,000 portfolio, and you have to say, you have to sit down and write down, okay, what if I had $10,000 and I wanted to invest it today, what companies would I invest in? Right. And so let's say one of yours is Pepsi, right? So Pepsi is not a bad company. Let me see where it is right now. Doing this on the fly here. So Pepsi's $160 a share, pays a dividend of 2.93%, which is $4.60 a share. And so for $160, you get one share of Pepsi. Now, one of the things that I would like to mention is that when somebody's starting a portfolio, I always think that you should anchor your portfolio with just the general stock market. Okay. So that would be ETFs that are SPY, which is the S&P 500, the DIA, which is the Dow Jones Industrial Average, right? And then the QQQs, which tracks the NASDAQ. So those three, if you have one share each of those, that is going to basically cover the American stock market for you, right? So the SPY is the 500 largest companies. The Dow Jones is the 30 companies that encompass the Dow. The QQQ is all the NASDAQ companies. Now, luckily for you, the market's been down 11 of the last 12 weeks. So, when's the last time that happened? Never. It's never happened before.
Wow.
So congratulations. But that SPY, DIA, and QQQ, if you bought all of those, it's going to cost you around $1,000. So each one of those is like 300 and something. I mean, I have to check, but somewhere around there, right? But when you buy those, you're anchoring yourself to the American market, right? To the stock market. And then you can start to add in your individual stocks that you discuss, like Pepsi, right? Or if you want to buy Apple, or if you want to buy Amazon, which split and is only $109 a share. Like right now, Amazon's only $109. And, last year before the split, it was $3,700. So you have the opportunity to buy into Amazon now when you wouldn't have. Same thing for Google. So Google is going to split on July 1st, and it'll be around $100 a share. So those could be some stocks that, 6 months ago would have been too expensive for many investors, but now you have the opportunity. Tesla just announced they're going to do a 3-for-1 stock split. So they're going to go, right now they're $700. I guess they'll be close to a little above $200. So it's really kind of you sitting down and looking at the companies you want to invest in and looking at, okay, and to start tracking them, right? So let's say you start looking up who are the companies you believe in. So we have Pepsi. If you're an athlete, maybe you like Nike. I don't know. But you just start writing down companies that you think that you would enjoy investing in. And then you got to start looking at, okay, you got to go start doing homework on them. Which ones pay dividends? Which ones, have a lot of debt? Which ones, is their PE ratio good? Is it low? Is it something that you think is at a fair price? You go look at the stock chart. How beat up has it gotten over the past 6 months? And you really start to look at, okay, which one of these do I think is the best value today? And you have to start looking. So for some of these, you might have to save up a couple months before you can buy your share, but you got to have that game plan, right? You got to be able to know, okay, this is what I want this to look like. And, and then you got to be patient getting there, because I think, so one of the big mistakes that when people are starting to build a portfolio from scratch, it's daunting when you're like, I have $100 a month and the stock I want to buy is 400. That's hard for people. And so what ends up happening is that they start going for things that are like penny stocks because they can afford more. Does that make sense? So they're kind of, but you can find good stocks like, so, let's say we put on here, you want a bank, let's put Bank of America. You want an oil stock. So maybe you do like Plains All American, Plains All American's $11. Bank of America is $32. So you can find some companies that are good, there's going to be some that are going to be below that $100, and there's going to be some that are going to be above it. And so you have to start, basically framing out what companies you want to own, the ETFs, which are the SPY, DIA, QQQ. You frame those out, and then you say, okay, where's the best spot for my money this month? Or do I just keep it for this month and start adding to it? But the big key is making sure that you do the automatic transfer into that investment account, no matter what,
Of course. So you would say, and I totally agree, having the anchor of ETFs, S&P 500, the Dow Jones, just because also I think that's going to give me like an opportunity to learn about all the companies in there, learn a little bit about each, dig into, as you say, do my due diligence and do my homework. But I wanted to ask you, so let's say I wanted to buy the stock of a company that's $300. Obviously, I would keep adding $100 a month to my account And when I have enough money, then I buy that stock. Is that what you recommend, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and if you're doing like, $100 a month, if let's say you do a trade every quarter, right? I mean, that goes back to our dollar cost averaging, episode where, you're sitting there, buying, every month, or you're making some kind of contribution there. And I don't, you might not have that many. I mean, AT&T is another one. I mean, it's $18, $19 a share, and it pays 5.65%. And most people will pay their cell phone bill before they'll eat. I mean, that's just how the world works today. So, I mean, there are companies that are, I mean, Apple's $135. And I definitely think you should buy, I would recommend Apple. I mean, there's some good, solid companies that are like right there within your grasp that can really help, that you can, I would think be safe owning for the next, 10, 20 years. I mean, that, and then really just starting to look at, okay, am I diversified? Right. So if you were to buy Apple, Google, Facebook, if it's all tech companies, you're not really diversified. So then you have to start thinking, okay, do I have a bank? Do I have financial? Do I have technology? Do I have, maybe a medical type company? I mean, just different. You don't have to be in every sector, but you at least have to know, okay, you got to be aware of the sectors that you're in. And so the nice thing about those ETFs, just to mention, like, so let's say the Dow Jones makes a change. Let's say they take a company out, they put a company in. Like if you own that ETF, it happens automatically for you. Right? You don't have to do anything. So like a couple of years ago, they took out Exxon. They probably wish they wouldn't have, but they took out Exxon and they put in Salesforce.com. Well, if you own that ETF, you don't have to do anything. It happens automatically. And then make sure that you turn on, dividend reinvestments, and then it'll automatically reinvest the dividends for you. And you don't have to do anything on that either.
Of course. That was a great episode, by the way, about dividends. I think that's something a lot of people miss on.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it is the key to compounding is dividends and reinvesting those dividends. But, there's a lot of companies that don't pay those. Cryptocurrencies don't pay those. I mean, it's slow. I mean, it doesn't happen fast. It's, there's a reason that people don't sell get rich slow schemes. Right? It's always get rich quick. Nobody's running a get rich slow scheme. It just doesn't happen.
Nobody would buy that.
Nobody would buy that. That's right. And they're all pretty much the same. 1800s, 1900s, 2000s. I mean, there will always be get rich quick schemes. And unfortunately, it catches a lot of people, unfortunately. So, but how does that sound?
Yeah, I think it all makes sense. Again, my idea with this is just to learn along the way, not just give my money to someone and expect magic to happen. Mm-hmm. I work too hard to grow myself, grow my businesses. I understand the value of money. I know that money just doesn't come out of a tree. It comes from providing a service, from providing value to the world, to your clients. So I want to treat my investment journey just like that. And knowing that it's not about the daily gain or the monthly gain. It's just how I'm putting myself in a position of discipline to invest, to really look at companies in a different way, not just, oh, look what they posted on Twitter, or look what the CEO is saying, but hey, I'm looking at the numbers, I'm looking at the revenue, I'm looking at their expenses, I'm looking at all those things, which I think for me as a business owner, it's going to help me. So knowing that I'm investing in companies where I'm putting my money where my mouth is, it's just going to help me look at things in a more professional manner, and really appreciate what you're saying, which makes a lot of sense in terms of having an anchor, but also looking at companies, as you say, Bank of America, AT&T, that have stocks that are worth less than $100. That's some good insight to obtain. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brick at a time, I mean, it's a brick at a time. I mean, it really is. I mean, and so just knowing that, getting started and thinking about one of the exercises I do with some people is I tell them, okay, if you're going to pick a stock for your child, right? Let's say you have a 3-year-old child. let's say you were going to pick 5 stocks that you were going to invest for them today, and you couldn't touch it for 20 years. They couldn't touch it till they were 23. What would you pick? And so they name off companies like the company Procter and Gamble, Coca-Cola, Apple, things like that. They pick solid things that they know will be around in 20 years. And then I say, okay, why wouldn't you pick those same companies for yourself? You're 27, you're going to be 47, right? Like, why would, if you're going to do that for a 3-year-old, why wouldn't you do that for you? And when we do that exercise, we pick more solid companies. We don't pick things that we think are going to be, for chance. Like when I'm talking to young students, I tell them, would you invest in Snapchat if you knew you couldn't sell it for 20 years? And, and sometimes you get a lot of, people thinking, they're like, man, I don't know. Snapchat might not be around in 20 years. Somebody might, take them out. There might be another one. And, I'm pretty confident McDonald's is going to be around. I'm confident Coca-Cola is going to be around, Pepsi, whoever it is, Procter and Gamble, they're going to be around. And so it changes your thought process when you think about, is a company still going to be around later on? Because it takes away, if you don't have the ability to trade out of it, you might not do it. So when you ask yourself, if I'm willing to hold this for a long time, I mean, I try to, for myself personally, my personal account, I try not to sell anything. Like this year, I'm trying to go the whole year with selling less, like having less than 5 sales. I think right now I'm at 1, but and that came from, listening to a couple, speeches or whatever from Warren Buffett. And he talks about, like, if he would have never sold anything, he'd be worth more money, if you can believe that. He's like, some of my investments would have gone to 0, but some of them, that were up, that I sold would be up 150% from where they, and I sold them when they were up 10, or whatever. I mean, it's so, you just never know. Right. So try not to be your own worst enemy. Is there anything you're afraid of?
Oh, that's a good question. I won't say I'm afraid of losing money, because I know if I have a long-term mindset, I'm not gonna lose money. I'm just afraid of letting myself be guided by, like, my ego, or like what everyone thinks is the right thing. But I think if I got through this crypto boom without following the sheep mindset, I think I'm gonna do pretty okay. Just because, and I remember I was like one step away from creating a wallet and putting $500, and so I don't know what happened, that at the moment the money did not go through, and I was like, okay, this is a sign from the universe, right, that it's not for me. And really, it was like, I was gonna do it because I did my due diligence. I'm like, okay, this is only going up, but really, I'm glad it didn't, just because I'm seeing people that put their money just because everyone was putting their money. And I look at them, and not only did they lose money, but they lost time, because they were putting all their energy into this. They were, looking at all the info, looking at the charts all the time, looking at their phone. I'm like, I'm so happy that wasn't me, because I've never been someone like that, to just be looking at things all the time. I like to plant a seed and water it, and not just, look at it all the time and expect it to grow. So really, that would be my main thing I'm scared of, just like making a decision based off my impulses, or of like making money quick. Because I've seen, and obviously from listening to your podcast and just seeing how you are as a person, I'm like, I want to be like that. I want to be okay with my money, and knowing that all the decisions I make come from concise thought, not from impulsive thoughts. which is, you always say, separate your intellectual mind.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which people think I'm saying that to them. I say it so much because I have to remind myself, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's tough. I mean, when you have tough years like this, I mean, you have to remind yourself that, like, I'm trying to increase my share counts. I'm trying to do all those things, because it does get, it's hard. I mean, the hardest thing is, when you see other people making money and you can't figure out how they're making money. I mean, it starts to pull you in. I mean, it's hard but really, if you tell yourself, like, I'm only going to invest in things I understand, that keeps me out of a lot of bad investments. I mean, like, I know some of the people listen to this, but I was kind of joking because I did that episode last week on SPACs, and people are like, it's kind of confusing. I'm like, yeah, it wasn't a very good episode because I'm confused. Like, I've been studying finance for 20 something years, and it's confusing to me. And so, I've always found that I feel like if things are really confusing, then something isn't right. Like, there's a reason somebody has tried to make it confusing so that other people can't understand it. And I should probably just step away. I mean, it's always been a good rule of thumb for me, I think. So, yeah,
indeed. And I think that for me, I know I'm ready to start investing, just because the past year, I did a lot of inner work with my relationship with money. And I think that people don't do that enough. People my age, just because we grew up with the get rich quick, that's really what life is. Likes, comments, DMs. Like, it's just such our society and more of our generation, we grew up with that. So, like, I'm not trying to be that person. I'm trying to be someone that I prefer, instead of thinking, oh, this is expensive, I prefer to think, how can I be of more value to the world? How can I offer a better service? Because with that mindset, not only you make more money, but you can surround yourself with people that help you make more money and help you offer a better service. Just like we have the honor of working with you, like when it's Monday morning and our team is listening to your episode and the podcast, when I see them not only enjoying it, but learning from the things you say, it's fulfilling for me, because I'm like, okay, we are investing in ourselves. And I think really that's the best investment that you can do, and more when it's related to your personal finances.
Yeah. And the hard part with, like, social media, I mean, it's everybody's highlight reel, right? I mean, so you gotta be careful. And again, I mean, maybe I should, like, do a post. I'm like, hey, another dividend check came in. Got another dividend. I mean, like, it doesn't really have the it's not as good as me, like, leaning on a Lamborghini, that's in a parking lot, somebody that isn't mine, but I pretend like it is.
We would have had 10,000 followers a long time ago, but
yeah,
it's okay. Right. Let's keep it that way.
Yeah. I mean, it is hard. I mean, it's hard to go against the grain, but you have to remind yourself that 80%, really have no clue what they're doing. And the problem is, if you don't start doing it right now, what happens is you become older, and let's say you're 50 and you haven't saved and every investment you made hasn't worked out. Now you feel the worry of retirement, and what are you going to do now? You're really feeling time pressure, right? Because as you get older, the time pressure is what ends up happening. So then investors have to be riskier than they want to be, because they haven't put down the foundation that they should have put down when they were in their 20s and 30s. So you're just pushing a problem down later, down the road. Whereas, you can live a completely different life as long as you plant the seeds, as you talked about, when you're younger. And it's hard, because when you're young, it's not only like, I mean, there's people who have student loans. They're trying to save money for a house. They're trying to save money for, all these things to kind of get their life started. And it's like, well, I can do investing later. I'll do that later. But then you have kids, they like snacks, and they like Disney movies, and they like all the stuff that they like. And it just becomes, you think it's going to get easier. It doesn't. It does not get easier. I'm here to tell you, I'm from the future. It does not get easier.
Yeah, no, Dr. Peckham. And I think you hit a very straightforward point, which is preparing for the future. Like, I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't even have a girlfriend just because I'm 27, and whoever I meet now, it's probably going to be someone I try to marry in 2, 3, 4 years. But if I don't have money saved, then if I don't have enough source of income, why am I thinking about the future when I should be thinking about creating the future I want, which are two different things? And I see a lot of people my age and older than me that really are making 10 cents and they're spending 11. And that for me is really alarming, because in the future, I don't want to be that person. I prefer to sacrifice today, and in the future be like, okay, I can be the person that they call for an emergency when my family needs help, or I need to help a friend. I want to be that person. And I think then ingraining it all to the term of investing is just knowing that I'm putting my money somewhere that it's working for me, and not that I'm expecting a payout now, but who knows if in 40 years, that money that I start investing today, it can help my kids or my grandkids. I think that's going to be a satisfaction that I want to start working for today, and not a lot of people. And I think the episode you talked about credit card debt, that like 50% of people are bailing out on their payments. That for me was another one of those Monday morning wake up calls when I'm like, wow. And it's alarming because I see a lot of people I know with a lot of credit card debt, and they spend their money in trips and in clothes. And I'm like, wow, man, it's alarming. But I'm not here to give financial advice. You don't give financial advice. People have to find their own journey, but it's real. And I think, the older you get, the more pressure you have. As you say, time pressure, it's a real thing.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, and that's the way, I always used to tell, people, you can see what people drive, you can see what they wear, you can see the trips they go on, but you can't see their balance sheet. You can't see their credit card statements. You can't see, their bottom line. And so I think that is always hard for people, because you're like, hey, I know what you make, or I know kind of what you make. How you doing this? Like, how you making this happen? And they're like, hey, can't be a baller on a budget. It's just all these, different things, but it's just like, at some point, you got to figure out and you got to be true to yourself, like we're talking about investments. You got to be willing, you got to invest in things that that are true to you and your personality. So you'll stick with them. That's really the key. So you'll stick with them. I have doctors who don't want to invest in cigarette companies for obvious reasons, right? So just investing in things that are kind of, close to you or your belief system is also important, So, well, you got anything else? We can revisit this at another time, but I think this is pretty good right here. Good start anyways. Yeah,
I think whoever's going to listen to this and they also want to start investing, just the tips that you gave them, I think are key. So I really appreciate it. It gave me, obviously I took a lot of notes, and I know that once I start looking into companies, I'm going to start seeing, okay, do I believe in this? Do I want to be with this company in 20 years? And really, I'm just excited for this journey, just because I started my own financial well-being journey a year ago, and it's not only helped myself, but it's helped my businesses. Really, for me, like every month being able to pay the people that work with me, and that all starts because I have a good management of the money that I make, not only for myself but for my businesses. So now, knowing that I'm going to invest in companies where I'm going to be looking at their annual reports, it's just going to be a learning experience. And I think if I take this way, and in 40, 30, 50 years, it's going to reflect on that balance of that brokerage account.
That's awesome, man. I'm happy to help, and I appreciate you sharing your story and your thoughts. It's going to be very beneficial for a lot of people. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you. It's really an honor to be a part of this podcast.